Okay, let's talk about today's topic, which is actually, oddly enough, mentoring, which... Sorry, water back there. I guess we need to rewind a little bit just so you have context of why we're talking about this topic or why it's come to the forefront of my mind quite recently, is due to the fact that, the training program and that I'm on and the 3-year training program, it has yearly intakes, and over the past little while we haven't had intakes, but just recently we started a new intake for it for start for next year. And then I've been getting a bunch of messages online from a bunch of messages. I've gotten 2, whatever. But 2 people messaged me being like, hey, I know you're on this training program. I'm interested about applying to it. Can we talk about it? And I thought, look, the first time I was like, whatever, I'll do it. I'll give you I'll hear you out. And then the second time the guy asked me, and I was a little bit busy at the time, so I only half read it, but I kind of figured out what he wanted. And I was still okay with having a chat with him and talking to him about the program. But then he was like, he mentioned that he'd seen a bunch of these videos in the blog, and then I was like, you had my curiosity, but now you have my interest. So yeah, I helped him as well, and that was good. That was nice of him. But I guess what I'm trying to cover in this point, and something I kind of found myself, is it was one of the few times I took on a mentoring position or a mentoring responsibility that wasn't necessarily stipulated by a form of employment. It was more of a completely voluntary, offering of my time to help someone else and to mentor someone else. And the reason why, in the end, I spent so much time with the 2 of them, because they initially were only expecting, at most like a 15, 20 minute kind of conversation about, the training program and stuff like that. But in the end, we had in both instances, for both of the 2 people that asked me, we had, multiple hours long conversation. And, we covered all sorts of details. And I think a lot of the reason why was because I saw a part of myself in them. I was like, because they were both they were both a couple of years younger than me, and would have been in a similar somewhat position I would have been when I was that age and when I was, kind of doing the same things they were doing. And I thought to myself, they're wanting help and they're wanting guidance on things. And I thought, why not actually, give them my time and give them the insights that they wouldn't otherwise know, but also that general kind of advice of having been in that position myself and having gone through the motions, and dealing with the excitement and hopefulness, but also the rejection and rebuilding yourself and but persevering. So being rejected but persevering and not letting that kind of phase you too much in the long term. Talking to them about those details and providing them advice and stuff on that, for me, was a really, I wouldn't say therapeutic, well, yeah, okay, I guess you could say therapeutic, but also a very meaningful kind of use of my time, because I haven't really thought, even though I'm doing this whole channel and stuff like that for self-development and wellness and trying to get this these kind of thoughts out there that can help people improve themselves, I've never really kind of looked at it as mentoring. I guess I've just kind of looked at it as purely informational, as an informational resource, not necessarily mentoring, which, is kind of foolish in many respects, and, I should have looked at it more in that way as to what I'm doing now. But spending the time with those 2 really kind of highlighted to me that even in my short career and, short amount of time out in the world as an adult, there's a lot that I surprisingly could provide to someone who was even just a couple of years younger than me, when it comes to advice and, here are the pitfalls that I kind of fell into, and, advice not to fall into them, and, strategies and suggestions around that. And then on top of that, things to focus on, and, did you know about this resource? This is something you should look into. All the things that, I would have loved to have known back then, but, the only way I could kind of really find out about a lot of it was just kind of by going through the motions myself. But then being able to essentially jumpstart and also give these people, a bit of a head start in many respects when it comes to the path they want to go down, like the similar path they want to go down to mine, is really was very like I'd say it was very like good, and good's not enough. Is not a sufficient enough word for like the experience, like the feeling and experience. I want to say the word meaningful, but I think I've already used that one, so I just don't want to use it again. But I guess you can see the point I'm trying to make. It's like, it makes me realize that like there's a lot more that I have to offer that I thought I'd, or may not have realized I actually had to offer. And I think realizing that myself almost is like a little mini epiphany that I've had, and provides, another avenue through which I can do things and, spend my time in a really constructive way. And going back to what I try to talk about, like a lot about on this channel, is it's also like developing yourself isn't just about improving solely you. It's also about offering your time and expertise and insight, for others, so that you don't just succeed yourself. So it's just like everyone succeeds, not just you, or you know what I mean? It's like being able to see that, even though at the end of the day, it's always going to still be that person's responsibility. It's always going to still be that person who's going to have to, open the door, but at least you can kind of be the one to help show them the door. And you'll never be able to fully do that, but you know what I mean? Like, you can help them as much as you can. And I think that's something we should try and think about in our lives. Like, where are there avenues or things or, interests that we have, or experiences or knowledge or expertise that we might have that we can actually provide to others in a semi-mentoring sense. And it doesn't have to be a formal mentorship or anything. That's not what these, conversations were about with these two. It was a very informal kind of spontaneous thing. But I think it's something we should either try to seek out as much as possible, like the ways to kind of pass on our knowledge and wisdom to others, and try to, help them the best we can by like providing, from like, speaking from our own experiences. But also I think it's something that if it kind of comes up spontaneously like it did for me with like these two instances, I think it's something that we should not, hesitate or walk away from because we think that we're too busy or that we've got things on. Like, I think I've been personally pretty busy myself, like with a lot of things that have been going on in my life quite recently. But even then, I still took the time to help these two people because I thought it's like, I just thought it would be a good way to do something good. And my, my thoughts about that and my, assumptions about it, which were right, it ended up being a really great experience. And I think coming out of those calls and those conversations, I was feeling, I felt really good about the whole situation. And I think so did they, because like I said, they weren't expecting someone to go into that level of detail and that much care. But then by the time I started talking about it, I just started to come up with like, just in my mind, like all of these things started just come rushing forward that I thought it reminded me of when I was in their positions. Like, this is what I would have wanted to know, like to have known. So like, let me tell you, like, sit down and take a second. Luckily they put up with me for the time and actually listened. And I think I did actually kind of somewhat get through to them. And I think they took on board what I had to say. And I think that's another really meaningful part of the experience is it's always very encouraging when you kind of mentor and give advice to someone and they actually genuinely do take it on board, and you can see it, like you can genuinely see it in someone's face when they actually appreciate and acknowledge what you're saying and go, you know what, like, you're right, and I'm going to incorporate that into, how I carry things and how I do things. Because it just, it somewhat, in ways validates your own thoughts and beliefs around things, which if you're doing the right thing, which is, mentoring others, I think that's a good thing to, reconfirm. And so I guess like I'm starting to ramble at this point, so I think at this point it's just good to wrap it up at this moment. But that's something that happened to me recently that made me think for a moment that, it's just like we should always try and find ways to mentor, the youth or, just other people in general, whether that be friends and family, or even just straight up strangers, that like contact us or we come into contact with, just because you can't really lose anything, you know what I mean? There's nothing you're going to lose from it. The most, you have everything to gain and very little to nothing to lose. So I think at that point, you won't really have any excuse not to kind of at least try. So if one of those situations do come up in your life, I do recommend giving it a go, and, you know, just, you know, give it your best. No one really is perfect at, you know, being a mentor or anything, and I don't think the mentee or the person you're teaching really expects perfection, so don't be too stressed out about that, and, you know, see how it goes. Thanks so much. Bye.